Hello, welcome back to my haunted library. It's Regina, and today I'm here with a book review. We haven't done that in a while, and that is for Stephen King's Christine. Beautiful first edition copy. I love the back photo of him with the inspiration, I guess, for the book, or if maybe he bought this afterwards. I'm sure there's a Stephen King fan who knows the answer to that. So I am not a constant reader. I'm not going to pretend that I am. Some people on YouTube, like Ed Lorne, like I've read every Stephen King book ever written. In fact, this summer he did a very cool series about like rating them all, which I enjoyed. But what I'm doing is just kind of going through my Stephen King books. I've started collecting first editions and reading the ones that I've never read. And that includes Christine. I thought I had read this, but actually I had just seen the movie. So Christine came out in 1983 by Viking Press, and it was also turned into a movie soon after by John Carpenter. It takes place in 1978, which was when I was in high school. I just started high school, and it was a real nostalgia piece for me. The way he describes the characters, Dennis, I could see that haircut that those jockey guys always had, and the leather jacket, and Arnie, and Lee, these were people that I went to high school with. And it takes place in Pittsburgh. I grew up in the other side of eastern part of Pennsylvania, but I felt everything that was in this book very authentically. So that was very pleasurable. Going to the drive-in with my friends, the football games, all of that stuff. So it was very enjoyable for that reason for me. Personally, it was a little walk down memory lane. So let's get into the basic concept, and I will have spoilers in this review. It's hard for me to discuss a book without some spoilers. But Arnie, a nerdy high school student, and his friend Dennis notice a dilapidated 1958 Plymouth Fury being sold by an elderly man with a back brace, Roland D. LeBay, who named the car Christine. Despite Dennis's reservation, Arnie buys Christine for $250. While Arnie finishes the paperwork, Dennis sits inside Christine and has a vision of the car and the surroundings as they existed when the car was new 20 years earlier. Frightened, Dennis decides he dislikes Christine. So that's like the basic setup. Now, Dennis doesn't like Christine. Arnie's parents are really against him buying Christine. Like really against it. And his parents are very controlling. Stephen King really fleshes out the character of the parents a lot. I really had a sense of like the home life, and also Dennis's family as well. Arnie, despite his nerdy, kind of college-bound persona, he takes the shop class with some of the greasers, and that is what we called those guys in high school. They were called greasers. They were the guys who went to tech school and worked on cars. So, and sometimes, you dated the greaser guy because, he was, the sexy guy. Let's face it, there was a little bit of that too. So the owner, LeBay, the old guy with the back brace, is giving off some weird vibes, especially to Dennis. And he says a lot of crude things. And Arnie just seems oblivious. He just is like focused. He has to have this car. So he takes the car. His parents are against it. He takes it, puts it in this garage run by this guy named Darnell. And this guy's sleazy. He runs this underground smuggling business. There's a lot involved in all of these characters. There's a lot going on. Dennis is kind of watching, a little confused as what's happening to Arnie, because the more he gets into restoring this car, the less he wants to hang out, but also that he's starting to change. Suddenly, his complexion is cleared up. He's not the geek anymore. He's not the nerd. A new girl moves into town. Her name's Lee. She's like the prettiest girl in school now. Suddenly, she's dating Arnie, and Dennis can't believe it. He shows up with Christine and Lee. He's driving Christine. She's now like perfectly restored. Shows up at the football game, and everyone's like, wow. There's this one greaser guy, Buddy, in the shop class who gets into a fight with Arnie. He pulls like a knife or something. He gets kicked out of school, so he's not happy about that. So he and his buddies break into this other garage near the airport where Arnie's now, I think that's where it was, keeping his car. and wreck it and do horrible things to it. And Christine's not happy with that. Christine starts to take revenge. In the meantime, Dennis is doing a little research about this guy, LeBay. He talks to his brother. He discovers that LeBay, there's a horrible history with this guy, and that his daughter choked to death in the car, and that his wife, in her grief, commits suicide in the car, in the garage, with the carbon monoxide. So there's an evil attached to this car. And Dennis senses it. He smells it. There's something repulsive about it. Now, if you think about like the energy of a place, or a thing, you wouldn't probably want to keep driving the car that your wife killed herself in. I'm just saying, most people wouldn't like want that energy around them, or that memory at least, even if you don't believe in energy. If your child choked to death in the car, you would never want to see that car again. But LeBay is not your average guy. And he is this evil character you learn about even after he passes away. You learn more about him. And there's a sense of he is the spirit of Christine. Like his evil is in the car, and the car starts to, by its own volition, when no one's driving it, getting revenge on the greasers who destroyed her. But she also has this way of restoring herself, which in the movie, the John Carpenter film, they do a really good job with that, with the special effects. I really like that movie. I mean, it's definitely a more basic rendition of the book, which of course it would be, but I think it hits pretty much all the plot points. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I really enjoyed that movie. So then we have another aspect of this story, which probably to me was probably the weakest aspect of the book, was the love triangle. Now, other people have criticized Stephen King's sort of romance angles in his book or his female characters. I don't know if I would go that far. I just didn't find the lead character, other than she's really like the pretty girl love interest. There wasn't that much to her character, I don't think. But it's all through Dennis's point of view, pretty much. At least it changes point of view, actually. I feel like when it was from Dennis's point of view, it was a stronger story, because you're kind of with him, observing what's going on with Arnie. And Arnie is an interesting character because he's kind of a passive character. This is being placed on him. He's not acting through his own volition. He is being possessed by LeBay. Okay, so the scene I'm going to read is when Buddy Repperton gets killed by Christine, and it's really great. And I'm not going to read the whole scene because it does kind of go on kind of long. Buddy Repperton was alive. He had been cut in several places by flying glass. One ear had been clipped off with surgical neatness, leaving a red hole on the left side of his head, and his leg had been broken, but he was alive. His seatbelt had saved him. He thumbed the catch and let it go. The crackle of fire was like someone crumpling paper. He could feel the baking heat. He tried to open the door, but the door was crimped shut. Panting hoarsely, he threw himself through the empty space where the windshield had been. And there was Christine. She stood 40 yards away, facing him at the end of a long, slewing skid mark. The rumble of her engine was like the slow panting of some gigantic animal. Buddy licked his lips. Something in his left side pulled and jabbed with every breath. Something busted in there too. Ribs. Christine's engine gunned and fell off, faintly like something from a lunatic's nightmare. He could hear Elvis Presley singing Jailhouse Rock. Orange-pink points of light on the snow, the rumbling whoosh of fire. It was going to blow. It did blow. The Camara's gas tank went with a hard thudding noise. Buddy felt a rude hand shove him in the back, and he flew through the air and landed in the snow on his hurt side. His jacket was flaming. He grunted and rolled in the snow, putting himself out. Then he tried to get to his knees. Behind him, the Camaro was a blazing pyre in the night. Christine's engine, revving and falling off, now more quickly, more urgently. Buddy finally managed to get to his hands and knees. He peered at Cunningham's Plymouth through the sweaty tangles of hair hanging in his eyes. The hood had been crimped up when the Plymouth blasted through the barrier arm, and the radiator was dripping a mixture of water and antifreeze that steamed on the snow like fresh animal spore. But he licked his lips again. They felt as dry as lizard skin. His back felt warm, as if he had gotten a moderately bad sunburn. He could smell smoking cloth, but the extremity of his shock, he was unaware that both his parka and the 2 shirts beneath had been burned away. "Listen," he said, hardly aware he was speaking. "Listen, hey!" Christine's engine screamed and she came at him, rear end flirting back and forth as the tires spun through the sugary snow. The crimped hood was like a mouth in a frozen snarl. But he waited on his hands and knees, resisting the overpowering urge to leap and scramble away at once, resisting, as much as he could, the wild panic that was ripping away his self-control. No one in the car. A more imaginative person would already have gone mad, perhaps. At the last possible second, he rolled to the left, screaming as the splintered end of the broken bone in his leg ground together. He felt something bullet past him inches away. There was a warm, foul-smelling exhaust in his face for a moment. And then the snow was red as Christine's taillights flashed. She wheeled, skidding, then came back at him. "No!" Buddy screamed. Pain lanced in his chest. "No, no, no!" He leaped, blind reflexes taken over. And this time the bullet was closer, clipping leather off his shoe and turning his left foot instantly numb. He turned crazily on his hands and knees like a small child playing eyewitness at a birthday party. Blood from his mouth now mixed with the snot running freely from his nose. One of his broken ribs had nicked a lung. Blood ran down his cheek from the hole in his head where his ear had been. Frosty air jetted from his nose. His breath came in whistling sobs. Christine paused. And then it goes on for several more pages until the dramatic conclusion, which you can probably guess what happens. So I'm just reading that section just because I was so impressed with it, and just the detail that Stephen King puts in that scene. I think it's a lesson for every writer. Like, I was taking it to heart. I tend to rush through a lot of stuff when I write. After reading this, I want to give myself permission to really feel, and as much as my talent will allow me, to explore those moments of all the senses are involved in this scene. You know, we've got what he's feeling, what he's seeing, the smell, the snow, the exhaust, the blood, you know, the temperatures of cold and warm, and it's all there. It's just really, really brilliant. So I also forgot to mention that each chapter begins with some lyrics from a famous rock and roll song that has to do with driving, like, you know, Chuck Berry songs, old, mostly 1950s songs that deal with the automobile and that what the automobile meant in the 50s. I know, like, for someone like my dad, you know, he had a Thunderbird, you know, red Thunderbird convertible back before he had kids, and then had to trade it in for a station wagon, which is really pretty sad. You know, having that great car, listening to the radio. Of course, Christine only plays 50s hits, which is pretty cool. There's a real sense of, like, a love for the 50s, which I'm sure is, you know, part of Stephen King's, of course, childhood. In his book, Danse Macabre, he talks a lot about, or writes rather, a lot about 1950s, you know, horror movies that he watched as a kid and stuff. So this was definitely part of his youth. And he also has a great appreciation for rock and roll. I know he's in a band, or he was in a band. I don't know if his rock band is still going on or what he's doing with that, but someone in the comments will remind me what is the name of his band, because I forget. So let me know in the comments below if you've read Stephen King's Christine, or perhaps seen the movie. What do you think? And what is your favorite Stephen King book? I know I started out saying this was a 4-star read. I just think maybe in the discussion today and thinking about it more, I'm bringing it up to a 5-star read. So that is my review for Christine, and that's all I have for today. Thanks for stopping by my haunted library, and I'll see you soon. Bye.